Okay, I think the slides are on. Welcome, everyone. I'm getting used to the lights here, so I'll try to find a good spot to stand today. Thank you for joining this session this afternoon. My name is Jodi Jones, and I work for a consulting company called Lean Techniques. And what we do is we help organizations transform their IT departments from a cost center into a competitive advantage. And the job that I have is working with client teams and helping them not only build software right and do that with speed and quality, I also help them figure out the right things to build for their customers and their user base. And I've spent most of my time working in this space. Today, what I'm going to share with all of you is some things that I've learned, some techniques that I've applied that have helped our teams navigate through uncertainty. So I'd like to start with this slide and see what resonates with you all. Have you ever encountered a situation that we've got up on the slide? Yes. Okay. What have you run into? Building the feature that was never used. Other hands went up. Go ahead and tell me what you're... Any other ones? There's one. Oh, it's really hard to hear. Can you? I couldn't quite get that one. It's going to be a challenge for me. Pardon?
Is that almost all of them?
Almost all of them. Okay, yeah. So, for sure. So sometimes, you sit through a planning meeting, right? Maybe you're sitting through a very long planning meeting. It might be a full day. Maybe it's a multi-day planning session. And the minute you walk out of that planning session, what happens? It changes out from under you. This happened to me last week. I sort of worked through a plan, and then I left and immediately learned some new information that changed what we were going to do as a team. Sometimes folks also feel like there's certainty in building out a backlog. Have you ever heard well, we got to get the backlog full. Do we have enough work in the backlog for the team? And we find comfort in building out this plan, and then how old are some of those tickets that are sitting in your backlog? They age out very quickly, and we're dealing with changing information, and so some of these things that we do have negative practices that influence how our teams work. So my next question for the group is, why do we do these things? You all laughed. You all maybe have been through this situation before. Now it's why do we do them? Sometimes it's justification. Sometimes it's the way our organization works. Sometimes it's this is what the product manager said we were going to work on. Sometimes it's this is what my boss wanted. So I'm doing it out of obligation. But what I've come to learn is that we are, as humans, we are craving certainty. And so doing these activities makes us feel comfortable. When we get this backlog built, when we ship a feature, we plan a feature for delivery, we feel safe and we feel comfortable. So let's talk a little bit about let's go to your daily routine. Maybe just in your life, you have a routine that you follow. Maybe you drive to the office if you work from the office, or you have a gym that you go to, or you drop your children off at school. You maybe have some routines that you follow, and you go through those routines on a daily basis, and you have the routes figured out. You know what time you need to leave to arrive on time. You have this pattern established, which is helping you not have to deal with uncertainty. So we find comfort in those routines. Sometimes I'll like drive to the office and I might not even remember like the drive. Like maybe that's happened to some of you before. Like you're unconscious of it because it's just a pattern that you follow. You don't have to make decisions. So I was thinking about yesterday. So I came over to the Spectrum Center yesterday, and I didn't know my way around. I didn't know how long it was going to take me to get from the hotel over here. When I got here, I didn't know where room 7 was. I didn't know what the room setup was going to be like, and that was like very taxing, right? So I'm just sort of making decisions on the fly, like, am I going the right way? What if I enter the building on the wrong side? Like, so there's all these decisions you're making when you're working in an uncertain situation. But yesterday I learned my path. I learned how to get here. I learned what the room setup was going to look like. I knew the lights were going to be shining on my face. But I learned those things, and I was uncomfortable yesterday, and I was more comfortable today because I had navigated that path. So those are a couple examples from your daily life, and what I want to talk about today is like how this uncertainty is constantly present in our software development or our product development. And so what we'll cover today, I'm going to go through 4 basic techniques so you can know where I'm at in the process. There's going to be 4. You're going to have 4 tips when you leave here. We're going to learn about categorizing problems, creating learning focus plans. If you were here in the session earlier, you might have heard the phrase, like, we don't know until we know. We'll talk a little bit about things like that. We'll talk about using evidence to help us with our uncertainty, and we're going to learn how to keep our options open and adapting to our plans to what we learn. So, categorizing problems. The first technique I'm going to talk about today is the Cynefin Framework. And I usually like to ask the audience to raise your hand if you've heard of the Cynefin Framework. Okay, there's a few hands that went up. That's really good. When I learned about this, like the first thing I had to learn was how to pronounce it, because for me it doesn't sound phonetically the same. So the Canvan Framework comes to us from Dave Snowden, and what I like to explain this model is it'll help us classify problem spaces that we're working in. So the first space that's on the model, we're going to kind of go around the loop here. We're going to start with the clear. And clear is where there is a best practice, there is an answer that you can kind of assess your situation, classify it, and you can respond. So for me, this is an easy one to do. Like, I'm from the United States. I think in Norway also. So in the United States, we drive on the right-hand side of the road. You drive on the right-hand side of the road here? Yes. Okay. So I can easily assess, I'm in Norway, we drive on the right-hand side of the road. I can make that decision and follow forward. There's a right answer. Now, if I traveled to Australia, I have to assess my situation. I'm in Australia. They drive on the left-hand side of the road. I can make my decision and move forward. So this is the clear domain, and this is where the answer is best practice. Complicated, move on here. So complicated is a place where your analysis and your expertise can help you make the decisions and paths forward. So for me, an example that I like to share is these are deterministic processes. So one example might be everyone in this room, we could assign ourselves a project, and our project might be to take all of the seats in this part of the stadium, disassemble them, scatter the parts throughout the room, and we could make a plan with fairly high confidence that we could reassemble all of the seats back together, right? We might have to organize in groups. We might have to do some analysis. We may have to read some manuals. We can come up with a reasonable plan to get that put back together, okay? So in like product development or software development, you might have examples like this where maybe we need to migrate a database to the cloud. And we know that we can do that. We're going to have to do some analysis, and we'll come up with the steps, and we can complete that task. We might have to coordinate with other teams, just like we did with the example of taking the chairs apart in here. So we can make that plan, coordinate tasks, activities, and we can deliver that work. The complex domain here is where the answers are going to emerge for you. So this is the place where a deterministic plan may not be the best choice for your work effort. This will be things where you need to like probe the market or understand, like, will your product be used by a customer? You don't know. You need to learn. Maybe you need to ship a feature and see what the adoption is. Maybe you didn't solve their problem and you got to try something else. Okay, this is where it's non-deterministic, and the solutions that you're going to come to are going to emerge as you take action. And planning in this space requires some adaptability and less of this long planning cycle that would be a traditional planning cycle. The chaotic domain here, this is where we need to act first at all costs. So this would be an example, and I want to make sure I'm very clear here. If we were in an emergency situation, we are not. So let's assume there might be a fire in the building. We would all act first to get to safety, right? We wouldn't assemble a team and create a project leader and create tasks and have everybody take the steps to safely exit the building. We would be getting ourselves to safety as quickly as possible. And this happens a lot in maybe an outage situation. Maybe you have like website down, platform down, we need to get this up and running quickly. So in this case, we act first, we recover the situation safely, and then we might look back and say, what do we need to do to make plans so that we don't find ourselves in this situation? So these domains I've found to help with planning deterministic processes. We can use traditional planning methods for, and complex and emergent, we're going to need to do some adaptive planning for. This is where you kind of have maybe your agile feedback loops, your lean processes, where you're getting feedback and you're adapting. So the first tip, there are going to be 4 of these. So the first tip here is let's just don't assume that every problem is the same, okay? If you assume every problem is the same, you're likely going to waste time using the wrong approach, okay? So I gave a couple examples up there. I talked a little bit about the migrating a database one. The complex one is where I think we find a lot of teams working. So they may be trying to hit objectives like, we need to improve customer retention, or we need more adoption on this feature that we just put out. How might we solve that? We're going to need to learn and do adaptive planning here. This is where we're going to experiment and test. Okay? All right, moving on. Okay, tip number 2, technique number 2, plan to learn. Okay, so we're going to plan to learn. This model that I like to use, it is a version of the Rumsfeld model. I like to use it as this Venn diagram. There are things that we know in our work, right? There's things we know how to do. Maybe we've done them before. Maybe we've done some research and we understand the space. There are things that we don't know, right? We might not know what's going to improve customer retention. We might not know how the users are using our system. And that's kind of the knowns and unknowns. And then there's the things that you know you don't know that sort of sit in the middle. And the things that you know you don't know, this is where you need to learn. Okay? So this might be you need to learn how to get that database deployed in your environment, at your organization. Maybe you've never done that before. So you need to learn it. Maybe we don't know how the customers use our product. We need to learn that. Things that we know, we're going to plan, execute, and iterate on. And then things that we don't know, we're going to have to leave space for the things we don't know, but we don't know yet. Okay? There's always going to be things that you don't know. After you ship it, something unexpected is going to happen. Your users will use your system in an interesting way that you never thought of. Like that's a perfect example. The story that I like to tell from the teams that I've been working with, we were applying this model, and we really didn't know we were planning in this way, but it turned out we were. So if you've been in this room today, you've probably heard a few talks about rewrites. I don't know if anybody's been in here today. For a couple sessions, I've been talking about rewrites. And a team that I was working with was rewriting some software, right? So they were replatforming it. So moving from an existing production system to a newly designed, newly architectured pattern. And as we were planning, our team was sort of in this meeting room doing a planning session, and we had taped the walls with tape, and we had put things like what would be a high value piece of functionality to rewrite into the new system? Like, where would that customer value be? What would high value be? And we would assess high, middle, low. We would also ask ourselves questions about what we knew. Like, what data did we have to say which features were the most often used, right? Which were not used at all? And do we know how to migrate these applications? Because this was a bunch of different types of features. So some were reports, some were view-only screens, some were CRUD apps, right? And so we had to work through a plan of how we were going to deliver this. And what we found was we got to a place where we were like, high value, do we know how to migrate this or not? And there were things we didn't know. And the development team sitting in the room was like, yeah, Jodi, but we don't know if these user claims are going to flow through. Like, if they log in to the portal and we hit the new product, we're not sure if the claims will come through. So we don't really know how to plan for that. We could have just carried forward planning, right? We could have just made a lot of assumptions and created this plan that was going to change the minute we left the room. But instead, the team was like, we don't know how to do that. We'd like to step out of the planning session for an hour and a half. We'll see if we can figure this out. And so a couple individuals left the room, worked through that problem, came back. We know how to support this requirement, right, of the authentication carrying through. So spending some time with the learning there was really helpful with our planning efforts and what we were going to deliver. And once we left that room, one of the more I kind of think it's a funny story is when we had an individual that was serving in a project manager role, and this was making a lot of sense to her, and once we sort of figured out what we know and what we don't know, she was like, yeah, when can I get the list of the unknown unknowns? And that's supposed to be where everybody laughs. Okay, so it's kind of funny because we don't know what we don't know, and so that we can't plan for that, so we need to buffer it. So the tip that I'd like to share with you here is to work to uncover the unknowns, and ask yourself and your teams, what do you know and what do you need to learn? How will we learn it? And what will our time box be for that? We don't have to plan lots and months of time to learn, but let's set some sort of time frame for what we're hoping to learn. As we learn, we're uncovering uncertainty, and now we know more on how we're going to move forward. Okay. Okay, moving on. Next, using evidence. Okay, so this is one of my favorite parts of the talk, so hope y'all have fun with me here. So I'm assuming you all, well, someone said they built a feature that was never used, right? Lots of hands went up around that. So y'all work with product managers? Anybody here work with somebody called a product manager or a product owner? Not sure. Okay, yes, lots of hands go up. And what do you imagine they do all day? How do they spend their time? Yeah? They actually have a very important job. They have a very big job, a very difficult job. They need to make sure that you're going to build something that is useful to the customer. It adds value to the customer. And that it creates impact to your organization, right? Like products that we build create value for the users and value for the company that we all work for. These 4 risks that I have up on the screen here, these are from Marty Kagan, and he's pretty well known in the product management community. Not sure over here if y'all have heard of Marty Kagan's work. Yeah, he's got some great books and interesting takes on product management. So these risks, your product manager is doing everything they can to mitigate these risks. So it's a very big risk if we build something and our customers don't value it. They won't use it. It's a very big risk if we build something and they don't know how to use it, right? Like we might know how to use it because we built it, and we go in the system every day and we know, click here, do this, do that. Your user might not know that path, right? So if you build something that's unusable, that's a risk. Feasibility. If you're in this room and you're a software engineer, this is one of the big risks that you help mitigate, right? Like, do we know how to build this? Can we build it? Do we have the skills, the team, the talent, the knowledge to do so? And if not, we may have to learn how to do these activities. And then viability. This is another big risk. This is where you want to make sure that the product that you're building fits your business model. So do you have the right distribution channels to support it? Is it in alignment with what your company direction is? It's viable for our business. Will it make our business money? Will we have a good return on this investment? So your product managers are doing this all day long. They're mitigating risks of uncertainty because a very big risk is we build the wrong thing. So you're a product manager and you got ideas coming at you all day long, right? Like customer just got off the phone with me. They want this feature. VP of marketing wants this feature, wants this part of our product to be built out. Team says this is the next thing we should build. Everyone's coming at them with ideas. Like ideas are coming at them left and right. Can you imagine how many ideas a product manager is sifting through trying to figure out what your team should build, right? And we don't want to make the wrong choices here. So we want to figure out the right thing. So they're kind of in this space where there's like idea overload coming at them. All these ideas are coming in at them. Like maybe that feature you built that nobody used, like maybe that was an executive's idea that you like worked on, right? Or maybe it was one customer complaint like that we thought we had to have. Or maybe it was a sales request to land one new piece of business. So if you're a product manager, what do you do? You're getting all these ideas at you. So how do you choose what your team builds, right? And how do you choose with relative certainty that you're going to build the right thing? So I'll ask now to the audience, like, how do your teams prioritize work? Anybody? It's all important. Okay, it's all important. So nothing's important. Okay, so maybe in that case it's all important. I prioritize a whole bunch of different things that don't like cohesively package up to something. Effort versus impact, right? So we believe in this will create an impact for organization, and we also check like the effort, like is it something a reasonable amount of work that I'm willing to fund a team for? Okay. Oh, okay, yeah. Every part of the business, like you're serving multiple stakeholders, right? And everybody wants a little bit of the allocation. Yep. Trying to make a lot of people happy across that slice. Anything else? Anybody working on something that was like the latest complaint from customer service? Sometimes. Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that I like to help product managers with is before we get to things like making sure we're filling an allocation or estimating like how much work this will take, I like to work with product managers and take all these ideas and plot them out on this matrix here. And the axis is here for perceived value. So we've got from high to low. So this idea that we're considering, right? We're considering an idea. What do we believe the value is going to be to our organization, to our customers, and to our organization? So we've got like high to low. And I'll tell you what, this probably happens to you also. Everything falls up in the high value quadrant because people bring you ideas that they believe have high value. Like a lot of people don't come to you and say, I've got this idea, but it's like low value, right? Like they think it's high. So we're just gonna start putting them on the chart, and we'll put them relative to each other, and we'll see how they fall. The next question that I ask the product managers for each idea is, how much evidence do you have that if we did the work, it would help us achieve this outcome for the customer or create this value to your organization? Okay? So how confident are you that if you shipped it, you would see that increase in customer satisfaction? How confident are you that you would see that feature adoption? How confident are you that you'll get the ROI that you've put forth? And a lot of times, people have trouble answering that question. And I'll tell you a couple of stories along the way about how we work through this. So one of the first stories I'll tell is about this executive who had a feature idea. And this executive was a highly paid person at an organization and responsible for a division, right? And they had an idea based off of a competitor. So a competitor had a product that they were discontinuing, okay? So competitor is discontinuing this product. If we build that product, the customers will come to us, okay? So sounds like cool, right? Like they're discontinuing it. We got a chance here. We got an opportunity to capture that market share. And so we had a high value like idea that we believed was high value, and we started with like landing up in this discovery. We didn't have a lot of evidence that the customers would come, right? And so when we got in this discovery space, we needed to do things like talk to customers. Like people who were using the old product, how did they feel about it being discontinued? If we created a similar product, is that of interest? Would you use that? We had to do a series of interviews touching different aspects of our distribution and our customer base. And what we found out through that time of doing that research is that was not the problem that they wanted us to solve for them. They had other problems that they cared more about being built into the product. So in this case, it's sort of our evidence moved that like down, okay? So what we needed to do is decided not to prioritize that work, okay? And we can't really like just put it on that corner of this matrix and like walk away and like, hey, here's our matrix, we're not gonna do this work. We still have to have the hard conversations with the stakeholder, right? We still had to walk into that office, talk about what we learned, talk about like what we would spend and what we would get back, right? And most of the time, you'll find that you're in a situation where that makes logical sense, right? And so this is a way that you can like sort of move through that process. Sometimes you may have to still do that project. Like I'm not gonna stand up here and pretend that doesn't happen because it absolutely does. But if you can talk through like the expected outcomes and value, you can save yourself a lot of money. Like you don't have to fund this team for 6 months now to build this product that no one's gonna use. This is gonna become that feature that nobody uses. One other story I'll tell quick here is like, you don't always have to do a lot of discovery. So if you've got high value and you've got a lot of evidence, you know, you can already queue that work up for your team. So one example might be, we've received repeated customer requests for something like the ability to search the entire platform. And we weren't really sure how to do that work, right? Like we had to search through multiple databases and data sources and content and et cetera to find like something that would provide a valuable search experience for our users. But we had plenty of user requests. This is something we don't have to spend a lot more time discovering if it's the right thing to do. But what we have to do is discovery on the technical solution. So how are we going to accomplish this work? So this is the chart that I like to use. The thing people then next, the follow-up question to this is, well, Jodi, I really am not sure how I should slide things like across that evidence scale. Like, what is high evidence? What is low evidence? And one of the tools that I've found to be helpful, this comes from a gentleman named Itmar, and he wrote a book called Evidence Guided. And when I found this evidence wheel, I really liked it, and so I tried it with some of the teams that I was working on. And the way that you read this is you start at the top at 12 o'clock, and you're going to read this clockwise. And so the things that have low confidence are things that come with like self-conviction. Like, I believe fully with my deepest soul that this is the thing we need to build next. Okay, maybe I have a pitch deck, right? Like I've pitched my ideas to some folks. Or it aligns with our company strategy. Anybody ever worked on something that was like, this aligns with our corporate strategy? I hope so, because like that's a good thing. But what that doesn't do is it doesn't guarantee that you're going to achieve the outcomes for your users that you're hoping for. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to create the impact that you want to have. You could end up in perfect alignment with your strategy, build the wrong thing. And we want to avoid big misses like that. So what we like to do is keep going around the wheel a little farther, right? So we want to make sure that we go beyond plans and evidence, plans and estimates. So this is like where we've estimated, right, the value and the impact. We want to get outside of our company. So most of the things on the first half of this wheel are coming from people that probably work inside the company that you work for. right? It might be a stakeholder inside your company. It might be an executive in your company. It might be the team that you work on. And what we know to be increase our likelihood of achieving our outcomes is if we get outside our building and we start talking to the people that use the products we build, right? So this is where we've getting market data, user experience. Maybe we've tested a prototype with a user. We have maybe done some A/B testing. And the more we get for evidence outside of our organization from our customers, the more likely it is that we're going to have a better chance at achieving those results. So this is sort of how we use the evidence scale, how we slide it from left to right on that scale. Now, let me check my notes here. Okay, so now I'm going to show a couple just different techniques that come out of the user experience space. So the practice area of user experience. So how many of you all work with user researchers or user designers that practice throughout? Okay, so they can become your best friend. And they are going to have a lot of insights on how to build products that your users will use and get value out of. So this grid here that I'm sharing comes from the Nielsen Norman group, and this isn't direct from them because they have a lot of techniques. There's probably, I don't know, let's say 20, 30 different techniques on their grid. I've just pulled out 4 that sort of fit into this quadrant. So if you want to understand how your users feel about your products, or if you want to understand how your users use your products, if you want data-driven insights, or if you want more qualitative feedback. So what we like to do is we like to use the go to Gemba, and this comes from Lean. And what this is go and observe your users using your product. You're going to learn a lot, and it's going to help you increase your confidence that you'll be navigating through things that are uncertain will become more certain as you do this. So a couple stories that I'll share here. I had a team that had an application, and they kept deprioritizing a story that was improve the performance of this feature. Okay, so how many times have you seen that story come up we want to improve the performance, and it kind of gets pushed down, right? Pushed down the stack, right? Something more value driven, something more feature related, sort of seeing performance as lesser priority. And this effort kept getting pushed down. When we went to observe users using the product, it was really an eye-opener, to be quite frank. We walked in, and the first thing this individual did is she opened up the application, and you needed to search. Maybe you need to search for an employee at your company. So type the name, and then hit the search key, stood up, walked away from their computer. What's happening here? Well, I'm going to get my coffee. This search is so slow. If I have time to go walk, get my coffee, come back, and if I'm lucky, I'll have the search results there. And if I'm not lucky, it'll have timed out, and I'll have to do this again. And so when we saw that, the value of improving the performance really rose, right? And the evidence that we would help our users find value in our product increased, okay? So it's very different than seeing a Jira ticket or whatever ticketing system you use that says improve the performance of this function versus actually seeing somebody having to struggle with the performance of your application. So that's one story. Another story I'll tell is of a team that built the feature that wasn't used and how they learned about that. So this team was working on a rewrite. So we've heard a lot about rewrites today. This team was rewriting an application, and the old application had 2 paths to start this process. You could search for the SKU, Or you could find it from a list of your, like, you have it stocked on the shelf, right? So like your inventory list, or you could type in the SKU number to find it, and then you can initiate a process. So this team built both paths. They asked questions, right? Like, do we need both paths? What's being, used or not used? No, it's feature parity. We gotta provide same experiences for our users. The old product had it, the new product needs it. So team went forth, built both paths, and then once they had that ready, they worked through like a usability session with customers. Okay, and they get in there and they're watching the customer start the process. Okay, and what happened? Everyone took one path. Everyone typed the SKU, because in their process they had the SKU like available. They didn't need to do the look at my inventory list to find the SKU back there. So this product person was like, wow, like, out of all of those interviews, I never saw anyone take that path. And I kind of wish I wouldn't have had the team built it, because there's even some bugs in that path that I was going to queue up. Like, I knew there was a few like glitches in it. I'm not going to prioritize that anymore. I regret really building that feature early, right? So this is kind of a story of where, like, when you watch your users use your system, you can learn what's important to them, and it's going to increase your likelihood that you build the right thing. Okay, so the tip that's coming out of this evidence section is, if you spend only 1 hour gathering some evidence from your users, that's better than none. Okay? And things that you can do, I kind of told stories about them, but you can do some usability tests, you can do customer interviews, you can look at your data, right? You probably have your system instrumented, right? Like, you can see who's using which API calls, you can see who's taking what paths through your application. Look through that data. If you spend no more than 60 minutes doing this, I bet you'll have more evidence than you had before that. Okay, moving on. Fourth section, keeping your options open. Planning with options is really interesting to me, and this is where I find this more useful, is like for the implementation path, right? Or like, we are working on the delivery. We've decided we're going to build something. We've done the evidence gathering. We've done the discovery work. We feel this is the bet that we're willing to make. This is an investment we're ready to take. And the team needs to figure out, like, how are we going to slice through this work? And how are we going to deliver this? What iterations are we going to come up with? Like, how might we get this product built and shipped? So I like to use story maps. And are you all familiar with story maps at all? Okay, some heads shaking and hands up, a couple no's. So these come from Jeff Patton, and he wrote a book on story mapping, which I really like. And this has been really helpful working with teams and executives who would like to know, like, where are you at on the path to delivery, right? So you might get these questions like, when are you going to be done with that feature? Is it done yet? How close are we? Are we almost there? Like, you'll get these kind of sort of status type questions. What we like to do is sort of do a story map. And for this, we're going to take the user's perspective, and we're going to say, this user would like to perform these activities with our product so that they can reach these outcomes. So we have like sort of a persona or a user journey, and we know what they're trying to use our product feature for, okay? And we're going to group those such that we can deliver a small piece of value to the market early. And then we learn what happens after that, right? We're going to see how they use it. We're going to figure out what they need next. Like, what is the thing they asked for that we didn't have in that first increment. That's going to inform our next roadmap. But we can sort of group these into releases. So you might be able to scope a release 1 that would provide certain value to your customer and return to your organization. And then you can plan release 2. Okay? Now, I wouldn't plan out like 5, 6, 7 releases necessarily, right? Because what did we learn earlier? Like, we're going to learn something that's going to change that plan. So we're going to sort of pencil these in, right? And then we're going to have options. So after we get release 1 shipped, we have an option. We can keep going if we haven't reached the outcomes that we were searching for. Maybe we were looking for certain adoption rates or customer retention rates, and we shipped increment 1. What if our numbers didn't move? What if our outputs didn't move? Well, maybe we invest and we keep going for the next release, right? But what if we hit our goals right out the gate? What if we saw a great adoption and this feature we just shipped like exceeded all of what we had hoped for, right? We may not choose to work on release 2. We might choose to work on something else. And so having this here gives us the ability to take alternative paths through our delivery plan. We found that this is also very helpful in communicating your plans, right? So you want to see a plan, we can sketch one out for you, and we know that we have options along the way to pivot. But we have a plan which gives comfort, right? It helps us. We know the path we're going to travel. We don't have this unexpected, like a lot of unexpected. We'll run into some. Guarantee we'll run into some. But we'll have sort of a feeling of comfort in knowing where we're going. And then we pivot when we need to. So the tip that I have here, so let's plan with options in our work, not just the steps that we have to take. So let's create a plan that has some adaptable scenarios, and it will have points in time where we can pivot based on what we've learned, okay? And we have a direction, but we have room to adjust as we learn. So this is an effective way of communicating plans, and it gives you flexibility, okay? So now that was the 4th. I told you there was 4. We reached 4, and now we're going to kind of wrap it up here. So the things we've talked through so far, categorizing your problems so that you know which planning method to take, okay? So look for things that are deterministic, non-deterministic. Pick the right planning approach for you. Build learning into your plan. So plan to learn. As you do the work, you will learn, and you need to plan on that. Plan for those unknowns that you're not sure how it's going to be received in the market. Plan for those unknowns that we're not sure how to build it. So let's work through work through what we know we don't know. Okay, and then use evidence to help guide your prioritization. So as you have more evidence that this will be helping you achieve your customer value, like what does your customer want to get out of this? What does your organization want to get out of this? You can even use that evidence wheel. You can go back to your team like next week after this conference is over, and you can look at the feature that you're working on right now. Maybe think about the work that your team is doing right now and see where you are. You don't have to necessarily kind of go all in on this, but you could just do a little check, figure out where the feature you're working on, where was it at before your team started. You might learn something, and maybe you can apply some techniques going forward. And then keeping your options open, let's plan for adaptation and keeping our options open instead of locking in early on a plan. Here is kind of the tip sheet. So as I was going through, I saw some of you capture some of those tips. This is the summary sheet. I have a few handouts with this material on it. If you would like it, you can take back. There's a little card, and there are 2 stacks of them at the exits. So if you like are the person who wants to like have a take-home piece to touch and feel, like that, we have that there. So summary sheet here. And then lastly, this is a link that you can use to get the slides to my talk. So if you're interested in taking any of the content back to your teams, you can use the QR code. You can get the slides that I walked through today. My contact information is out there. I really love talking about this stuff, and I love to learn like what other teams are doing and experiences you've had. I'll be here through Friday. I think I fly out on Saturday. I am flying out on Saturday. I need to do that better. So I'll be around if anybody wants to chat more. Happy to take questions here at the end too. That's all I've got. Thank you.